Greetings, everyone, in the name of the Lord. Advent greetings. It is Advent, and so at least it is when I'm doing this. Maybe it still is when you're watching it. But congratulations on arriving here at the end of semester. I'm working on submitting grades today, and so just wanted to offer just kind of this closing reflection in this particular class and thinking about Sabbath and Jubilee and how these rhythms are finding their way into our lives. It's really been fun to monitor your reflections and the important readings that you've been doing for this course, and it was especially great to be with you all in October. Look forward to some more opportunities for that along the way. But I have enjoyed reading through your Sabbath experiment reflections. It's just so interesting to realize that all of us, including me, are so shaped by this culture of busy productivity and maybe also fear, fear of solitude, fear of quiet, that we find ourselves fairly removed from robust practices of Sabbath renewal. It's just interesting, how new in many ways this was for most of us, I think. So I think our collective learning through this experiment was significant. I hope you are thinking carefully about not only your personal experience of this, but also the learnings that happened and that were reported out in the experiences of your colleagues in the class. As I went through, I just made note of a few kind of key ideas that I heard or read in your reflections. And I just wanted to note those for all of us as we kind of wrap this up. Just four things. One of them is Sabbath observance opens a space for relational connection and conversation. It seems to me that we're fairly starved of real intimate conversation in our lives, which I suspect is the source of so much of the prevalent anxiety among us. Someone used the phrase in your reflection, a conversation began, talking about what happened in the midst of just the movement away from some of the other paces of life and all of that. I just find that a great way to express one of the beautiful gifts of Sabbath keeping. There's chance, there's space opened, an opportunity for conversation to begin, which that would be just maybe one of the great wins, if you will, of all of this, is a chance for that to happen in our households, in our congregations, in our communities, in lots of different ways. The second thing I would note is that there was an interesting mix of, on the one hand, folks, some of you saying, well, this was easier than I thought in a lot of ways, and yet, on the other hand, some saying, boy, I totally failed at this, which I put those things kind of connected to one another because that just might be the nature of this kind of spiritual discipline, because it's not isolated from the thickness and messiness of real everyday life. And so in this regard, we just have to grow in our practices. As we grow in our practices of this, we probably have to manage our expectations about it to avoid setting goals too high in this. To be thankful for the incremental, even small progress that comes as we learn how to do this. Take the long view. Third key kind of reflection is we who are thinking about these things, reading about these things, being challenged by them, we may be all in on incorporating these things into our lives, but just hearing the note that the alignment or sharing in this of our spouses, children, our households, that's another matter. It's very true. And we need to give ourselves some grace at this point. Again, taking the long view of helping our families to make major shifts, really, in some ways, in terms of practices and priorities. Fourth thing that I especially noted was the reality that pastoral crises will often take us out of these rhythms, commitments, patterns. That's true. That's just part of life. It's part of pastoral life, and we just need to know it doesn't mean that the effort is lost. Let's just try again next week. So good thinking and reflections on this experiment particularly, but on this whole subject that we've been trying to think about, as it really is a, an essential component of helping us to have sustainable ministries and lives. We want you to go for the long haul in this, not to just be, which is often too often the case, a few years and then out because we just can't. It's not sustainable. We can't do it anymore. And so these times of learning how to build these rhythms into our lives is so critical. So let me, if I may, just end with a few words that I actually penned previously, but in this context, I'll put them before us now as closing thoughts. Eugene Peterson helped me to learn that one of the best things a pastor can do for the people is to keep Sabbath. Pastors generally have been a chief among Sabbath breakers, somehow justifying our unrelenting activity from notions of the sheer importance of our work. Thousands upon thousands of burned out pastors testify that the rationalizations simply do not fly. This is true not only from the standpoint of physical and emotional health, but also and especially from the standpoint of spiritual depth. One simply cannot represent the ministry of Christ in congregation and community unless that ministry rises from deep and sustained times of spirit-directed meditation. And that's why Sabbath keeping is so important as an essential listening space for all Christians, of course, but maybe especially so for pastors. So keeping Sabbath, is much more than taking a day off, which is a concept borrowed again from the culture of commerce. I do believe it's vitally important for pastors to observe a full day away from the tasks of vocational ministry. Doing that, however, does not necessarily translate to authentic Sabbath keeping. The space that's required for Sabbath is a space that's created not only by time and location, but it's a work of the Spirit who faithfully draws the people of God into life-giving rhythms of grace. It is God breathing God's people into, inhale, the whole life and love of Trinity, and then breathing out, exhale, the people of God as renewed, restored, and ready servants of the kingdom. Knowing this kind of relationship with God requires that which is increasingly rare in our world: silence, solitude, peace. Well, God bless each of you. I hope as we move into the season of Christmas, it's not Christmas yet, it's Advent. Christmas, December 25th through January 5th, 12 days of Christmas. But as we move into the season of Christmas, I hope these Sabbath renewal thoughts and practices will continue to find place in your life and in your household. So thanks for being part of this. Grace and peace of the Lord be with you. Bye.